The sound of shattering glass followed Beatrice Voss through the back door of the saloon, her father's drunken curses ringing in her ears as she stumbled into the dusty alley of Abilene, Kansas, in the summer of 1878. She pressed her back against the wooden wall, trying to catch her breath while her hand instinctively went to her cheek, where the bruise from yesterday still throbbed. 20 years old, and she had never known a kind word from any man. Not her father, who drank away what little money they had. Not the cowboys who frequented the saloon where she worked serving drinks and enduring their rough comments. Not even the preacher who looked right through her on Sundays as if she were invisible. The August heat pressed down on Abilene like a heavy blanket, making the air shimmer above the dirt roads where cattle had churned the ground into fine powder during the last drive. Beatrice wiped sweat from her forehead with the back of her hand, leaving a streak of dirt across her pale skin. She needed supplies from the general store before her father woke from his stupor and demanded she return to work. The dress she wore hung loose on her thin frame, faded blue calico that had been mended so many times the original fabric barely showed through the patches. She hurried down the alley toward Main Street, keeping her head down as she passed groups of men lounging outside the various establishments that lined the thoroughfare. Abilene had calmed considerably since its wild days as a cattle town earlier in the decade, but it still attracted rough characters, and Beatrice had learned long ago to make herself as invisible as possible. The general store stood on the corner, its wooden sign creaking in the hot wind that swept across the Kansas plains. Inside, the store offered momentary relief from the heat and the stares of men. Beatrice gathered the few items she could afford with the coins she had hidden in her pocket, money she had managed to keep secret from her father. Flour, beans, a small packet of salt. As she approached the counter, she heard the door open behind her and heavy footsteps cross the wooden floor. "I need supplies for a month in the mountains," a deep voice said, and something about the gentle quality of it made Beatrice turn despite her usual practice of keeping to herself. The man who stood near the door was unlike anyone she had seen in Abilene. He stood well over 6 feet tall with shoulders so broad they seemed to fill the narrow aisle between the shelves. His hair fell past his shoulders in dark waves, tied back with a leather cord, and a thick beard covered the lower half of his face. But it was his eyes that caught her attention, a clear gray that seemed to hold both the hardness of stone and the softness of morning mist. His clothes marked him as a mountain man, buckskin and leather worn from use but well maintained. Muscles strained against his shirt sleeves as he shifted the pack he carried. The storekeeper nodded eagerly. "Of course, Mr. Brennan. I will get everything together for you right away." Beatrice realized she had been staring and quickly turned back to the counter, but her hands trembled as she counted out her coins. She was short by 2 cents and her face flushed with shame. "I am sorry," she whispered to the storekeeper. "I thought I had enough. I can put the salt back." Before the storekeeper could respond, a large hand placed several coins on the counter beside hers. Beatrice looked up to find the mountain man standing next to her, close enough that she could smell leather and pine and fresh air, scents so different from the stale beer and tobacco she was accustomed to. "That should cover it," the man said, his voice quiet and surprisingly gentle for someone so large and intimidating in appearance. "I cannot accept," Beatrice stammered, taking a step back. Men never gave anything without expecting something in return, and she had nothing to offer. "It is just 2 cents, he said, and then he did something no man had ever done. He looked directly into her eyes with what seemed like genuine kindness. "You look like you could use a break, miss. Please let me help." Beatrice felt something crack inside her chest, a wall she had built brick by brick over 20 years of harsh words and harsher treatment. She wanted to refuse, to maintain her pride, but the genuine warmth in his gray eyes made her nod instead. "Thank you," she managed, her voice barely above a whisper. "You are welcome," he replied, and the way he said it, so simple and sincere, made her throat tighten with unexpected emotion. The storekeeper bagged her items and she clutched them to her chest, uncertain what to do next. The mountain man had moved to give his long list to the storekeeper, and Beatrice knew she should leave, return to the saloon before her father noticed her absence, but her feet seemed rooted to the floor. "That is quite a load you are getting together," the storekeeper said to the mountain man. "Heading back up to the Rockies, eventually," the man replied. "Thought I would spend a few days in town first, rest my horse and resupply. Been trapping up in Colorado territory through the winter and spring, brought my furs down to sell. Well, we are glad to have you, Mr. Brennan. Your money is always good here." Beatrice forced herself to move toward the door, but as she passed the mountain man, he turned slightly and spoke again in that gentle voice. "Be careful out there, miss. Heat like this can be dangerous if you are not used to it." She paused, confused by his concern. "I have lived here all my life," she said. "I know the heat." "Then you know to take care of yourself," he said, and there was something in his tone that suggested he understood she did not always have that luxury. Beatrice fled the store before the tears that suddenly burned in her eyes could fall. She hurried back toward the saloon, her mind spinning with confusion. Why had he helped her? What did he want? But even as the familiar cynicism tried to reassert itself, she could not forget the genuine warmth in his eyes or the gentle way he had spoken to her, as if she were a person worthy of respect rather than something to be used or ignored. Her father was still unconscious on his cot in the back room when she returned, snoring loudly with an empty bottle on the floor beside him. Beatrice put away the supplies and then began her work, wiping down tables and preparing for the evening crowd. The owner of the saloon, a hard woman named Mabel who had little patience for weakness, gave her a list of tasks that would keep her busy until well past midnight. As the sun began to set, painting the Kansas sky in shades of orange and pink, the saloon filled with the usual mix of cowboys, ranch hands, and drifters. Beatrice moved between the tables with practiced efficiency, avoiding grasping hands and crude comments with the skill born of long experience. She had just delivered a tray of drinks to a particularly rowdy table when the door opened, and the mountain man walked in. He moved with surprising grace for someone so large, and the noise in the saloon seemed to dim slightly as men took notice of this stranger in their midst. He found an empty table in the corner and sat with his back to the wall, a position that allowed him to watch the entire room. When Beatrice approached to take his order, her heart was beating faster than it should. "What can I get you?" she asked, keeping her eyes down as she had learned to do. "Whatever you have for dinner," he said in that same gentle voice. "And water, please. No whiskey." She nodded and turned to go, but his voice stopped her again. "What is your name, miss?" She hesitated, unused to being asked rather than having men simply demand or assume. "Beatrice," she finally answered. "Beatrice Voss." "That is a beautiful name," he said, and the way he said it, so matter-of-fact and sincere, made her breath catch. "I am Pearce Brennan." "I know," she said. "The storekeeper said your name." "Then we have been properly introduced," Pearce said, and she thought she detected a hint of a smile beneath his beard. "It is nice to meet you properly, Beatrice." No one had ever said her name like that, as if it were something precious rather than just a label. She hurried away before she could embarrass herself by responding emotionally, but she found herself glancing toward his table more often than necessary as she worked. Pearce ate his dinner slowly, seemingly content to watch the activity in the saloon without participating in it. He did not call for whiskey despite the raucous drinking happening around him, and he did not try to engage any of the other women who worked the saloon in conversation. When Beatrice brought him coffee after his meal, he thanked her with such courtesy that she almost dropped the cup. "You work hard," he observed quietly. "Have you been here long?" "All my life," Beatrice said, then wondered why she had revealed even that much. "My father works here too. Is he good to you?" The question caught her so off guard that she looked directly into his gray eyes, searching for mockery or ulterior motive, but found only genuine concern. "Why would you ask that?" "Because you flinch when men raise their voices," Pearce said gently. "And you have a bruise on your cheek that you tried to hide with powder. I know the signs of someone who has been hurt." Beatrice felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with the revealing dresses some of the other women wore. This stranger had seen in moments what most people in Abilene had ignored for years. She wanted to lie to protect her father despite everything, but something about Pearce's steady gaze made her tell the truth. "He drinks," she said simply. "He is not always aware of what he does." "That is no excuse," Pearce said, and there was a hardness in his voice now, but she understood instinctively that it was not directed at her. "A man who raises his hand to a woman is not worthy of the name." Beatrice had never heard anyone say such a thing. In Abilene, what happened between a man and his family was considered private business, and women had little recourse against fathers or husbands who mistreated them. She opened her mouth to respond but was interrupted by a hand grabbing her wrist. "We need more whiskey over here, girl," a drunk cowboy slurred, his grip tight enough to hurt. "And maybe you can sit with us a while, pretty thing." Before Beatrice could pull away, Pearce was on his feet and moving with startling speed for someone so large. His hand closed around the cowboy's wrist with enough pressure to make the man yelp and release Beatrice. "The lady is working," Pearce said, his voice calm but carrying an undercurrent of steel that made the cowboy and his friends sober up quickly. "You will treat her with respect or you will answer to me." The cowboy looked up at Pearce's imposing figure, and whatever he saw in those gray eyes made him back down immediately. "No offense meant," he muttered, rubbing his wrist. "Just having a little fun." "Find your fun elsewhere," Pearce said. He released the cowboy and turned to Beatrice. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, too stunned to speak. No one had ever defended her before, certainly not a stranger who had nothing to gain from it. The saloon had gone quiet, everyone watching to see what would happen next, but Pearce simply returned to his table as if nothing unusual had occurred. Mabel appeared at Beatrice's elbow, her eyes narrowed. "You know that man? I met him today," Beatrice admitted. "At the general store." "Well, he just made a show of defending you in front of everyone," Mabel said. "That is going to cause talk. Men do not do that unless they have an interest." Beatrice felt her face flush. "I do not know why he did it." "Then you better find out," Mabel said sharply. "Because if he is going to cause trouble in my establishment, I need to know about it." Beatrice approached Pearce's table reluctantly, aware of all the eyes on her. "You did not need to do that," she said quietly. "Yes, I did," Pearce replied. "No man should treat you that way." "But now everyone will talk," Beatrice said. "They will think things that are not true." "What will they think?" Pearce asked, his gray eyes steady on hers. "That you have claimed me," Beatrice said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "That I belong to you. Do you belong to anyone?" Pearce asked gently. "No," Beatrice said firmly. "I belong to myself." "Good," Pearce said, and she heard approval in his voice. "Then what anyone thinks does not matter. You are your own person, Beatrice Voss, and you deserve to be treated with respect." Once again, his words cracked something inside her, breaking down walls she had built for protection. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that a man could speak to her this way without expecting something in return, but years of harsh experience made it difficult. "Why are you being kind to me?" she asked, needing to understand. "What do you want?" Pearce was quiet for a moment, as if considering his answer carefully. "I have spent most of my life in the mountains," he finally said. "Up there, alone with nature, you learn to value the rare and precious things when you find them. Kindness, beauty, strength in the face of hardship. I see those things in you, Beatrice, and they deserve recognition." His words were so unexpected, so different from anything she had ever heard, that Beatrice felt tears sting her eyes. She blinked them back quickly, aware that crying in the saloon would only invite more trouble. "Thank you," she managed, her voice hoarse. "I need to get back to work." Pearce nodded and did not try to keep her longer. As she moved away to serve other customers, she felt his eyes on her, but not in the way she was used to being watched by men. There was no hunger or possession in his gaze, only that same gentle concern that seemed so out of place in the rough world she inhabited. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Pearce stayed until the saloon began to empty, always courteous when she brought him more coffee, never pressing for conversation when she was too busy to talk. When he finally rose to leave, dropping coins on the table that were far more than his meal cost, he paused beside her. "Where are you staying?" she asked before she could stop herself. "The boarding house down the street," Pearce said. "I plan to be in town for a few days at least. I hope I will see you again, Beatrice." "I work here every night," she said, then added impulsively, "You could come back tomorrow if you want." Something that might have been pleasure flickered in his gray eyes. "I will do that," he promised. "Sleep well, Beatrice." She watched him leave, his broad shoulders disappearing through the door into the darkness beyond. Around her, the remaining customers began to talk about what they had witnessed, speculation and gossip already spreading about the mountain man and the saloon girl. But for once, Beatrice did not care what they said. For the first time in her life, someone had spoken to her with genuine kindness, had defended her without asking for anything in return, had made her feel like she was worth something more than what she had always believed. That night, after the saloon closed and her father was snoring in his drunken stupor, Beatrice lay on her narrow cot and replayed every word Pearce had said to her. She touched her cheek where the bruise had faded to yellow, remembering how he had noticed and cared enough to ask about it. She thought about his words, how he had called her name beautiful, how he had said she deserved respect. Part of her still expected the other shoe to drop, for him to reveal some ugly motive behind his kindness, but a smaller, more hopeful part of her dared to believe that maybe, just maybe, there were men in the world who could be gentle without expecting anything in return. The next morning dawned hot and cloudless, promising another day of blistering Kansas heat. Beatrice woke early and managed to slip out of the saloon before her father stirred. She walked to the edge of town where a creek provided water for washing, and she scrubbed her one spare dress as best she could, wanting to look presentable when Pearce returned that evening. If he returned. She tried not to let herself hope too much, but the seed had been planted and refused to be ignored. She was hanging the dress to dry on a bush when she heard footsteps behind her and turned to find Pearce approaching, leading a large bay horse. In the morning light, she could see him more clearly, the way his buckskin shirt stretched across his muscular chest, the strength in his arms and shoulders evident even in his relaxed posture. His hair gleamed almost blue-black in the sun, and she wondered what it would feel like to touch. The thought startled her with its intimacy, and she felt her face heat with embarrassment even though he could not read her mind. "Good morning," Pearce said, that gentle quality still present in his deep voice. "I thought I might find you here." The storekeeper mentioned this was the best place to water horses in town. "Most people just use the trough on Main Street," Beatrice said, suspicious despite herself. "This is out of the way." "I do not mind the walk," Pearce said, "and my horse prefers running water when he can get it." He led the horse down to the creek and let it drink while Beatrice watched, uncertain what to do or say. She was acutely aware of how she must look, her old dress damp with creek water, her hair coming loose from its bun, no powder to hide the remnants of her bruise. But when Pearce looked at her, she saw no judgment in his eyes. "Did you sleep well?" he asked. "Well enough," Beatrice said. "And you?" "The boarding house is comfortable," Pearce said, "though I am more accustomed to sleeping under the stars. 4 walls feel confining after months in the mountains." "Why do you live up there?" Beatrice asked, curiosity overcoming her usual reticence. "Alone, I mean. Is it not lonely?" Pearce considered the question while his horse drank. "Sometimes," he admitted. "But there is a peace in the mountains that I have never found among people. The trees do not judge, the animals do not lie, and the silence is honest. After the war, I needed that honesty." "You fought in the war?" Beatrice asked. "I did," Pearce said, and something dark flickered across his face. "I saw things that changed me, Beatrice. Things that made it hard to be around people for a while. The mountains gave me space to heal, to remember what it meant to be human rather than just a soldier following orders." His honesty touched her deeply. "My father fought too," she said quietly. "He came back different, angrier. That is when the drinking started. War does that to some men," Pearce said. "It takes something from inside and leaves a hole that some try to fill with whiskey or violence or both. But it is not an excuse, Beatrice. What he does to you is still wrong, war or no war." "Where else can I go?" Beatrice asked, and she heard the desperation in her own voice. "I have no money, no family except him. If I leave, where would I go? What would I do?" Pearce turned to face her fully, and the compassion in his gray eyes was almost too much to bear. "You are stronger than you know," he said gently. "I can see it in you, Beatrice. You have survived things that would have broken someone with less courage. That strength did not come from nowhere. It is part of who you are." "You do not know me," Beatrice protested, but her voice lacked conviction. "I know what I see," Pearce said, "and I see a woman who deserves better than what she has been given. I see someone who works hard, who carries herself with dignity despite everything, who has not let cruelty make her cruel in return. Those are not small things, Beatrice. Those are the marks of a truly strong person." Tears spilled down Beatrice's cheeks before she could stop them, and she turned away, humiliated by her weakness. But she felt Pearce move closer, heard the gentleness in his voice when he spoke again. "It is all right to cry," he said softly. "Tears are not weakness. Sometimes they are the bravest thing we can do, acknowledging our pain instead of burying it." "I do not cry," Beatrice said, wiping furiously at her face. "Crying does not help anything." "Maybe not," Pearce agreed, "but neither does pretending you are not hurt." Beatrice turned back to face him, this mountain man who seemed to see straight through all her defenses to the wounded girl beneath. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice breaking. "Why do you care what happens to me?" Pearce was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his words were careful and sincere. "Because I have been where you are," he said. "Not in the same way, but I know what it is like to feel worthless, to believe the harsh things people say about you, to think there is no way out. After the war, I felt like I was drowning in darkness. It took me years in the mountains to find my way back to myself. But I had a choice to leave, Beatrice. I had resources and skills that gave me options. You have been trapped with no way out, and that is not right." Everyone deserves at least one person who sees their worth and tells them the truth about who they really are. And who am I? Beatrice asked, desperate to believe his assessment but afraid to trust it. You are brave, Pearce said simply. You are resilient. You are worthy of respect and kindness. You are beautiful, inside and out. And you deserve a life where someone sees those things and values them. Each word fell on Beatrice like rain on parched ground, soaking into places that had been dry and barren for so long she had forgotten they existed. She wanted to believe him, wanted so badly to accept that what he said might be true, but the weight of 20 years of contrary evidence was hard to overcome. I want to believe you, she whispered. Then start there, Pearce said. You do not have to believe it all at once. Just start by accepting that maybe, possibly, some of what I say might be true. The rest will come with time. You sound very sure of that, Beatrice said. Because I am, Pearce replied. I have spent years learning to see clearly, Beatrice. The mountains teach you to look past surfaces to what is real and true. And what I see when I look at you is real and true and worth defending. His horse had finished drinking and was cropping at the grass near the creek bank. Pearce gathered the reins but did not immediately move to leave. I should let you get back to your work, he said, but I meant what I said last night. I will come to the saloon this evening if you want me to. I want you to, Beatrice said, the words coming easier now. I would like to talk more if you do not mind. I would like that very much, Pearce said, and the warmth in his voice made her chest tight with emotion. Until tonight, then. She watched him lead his horse back toward town, his tall figure and broad shoulders making her feel safer even as he walked away. For the first time, Beatrice allowed herself to wonder what it might be like to have someone like Pearce in her life permanently. Someone who spoke gently and saw her worth, and made her believe she might be something more than she had always thought. The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. The day passed slowly as Beatrice worked in the saloon, cleaning and preparing for the evening crowd while her father slept off his latest binge. Mabel watched her with knowing eyes but said nothing, perhaps recognizing that something had shifted in her tired employee. When evening came and Beatrice changed into her cleanest dress, taking extra care with her appearance, Mabel finally spoke. That mountain man has got you thinking, she observed. Be careful, Beatrice. Men who seem too good to be true usually are. Maybe, Beatrice said, but maybe not. Maybe some men really are what they seem. And if he is, Mabel asked, what then? He lives in the mountains, girl. That is no life for someone like you. I do not know, Beatrice admitted, but I want to find out what is possible. I want to believe there is more to life than this. Mabel's expression softened slightly. Then I hope for your sake that he is what he seems. God knows you deserve some happiness after the hand you have been dealt. The words, coming from Mabel who rarely showed sentiment, touched Beatrice deeply. As the saloon began to fill with the evening crowd, she found herself watching the door, waiting for Pearce to arrive. When he finally walked in, dressed in clean clothes with his long hair tied back, her heart leaped in a way that both excited and frightened her. He found the same corner table and waited patiently until she could break away to take his order. Good evening, Beatrice, he said, and the way he said her name still made her breath catch. You look lovely tonight. No one had ever called her lovely. She felt her face heat with pleasure and embarrassment. Thank you, she managed. What can I get you? The same as last night, Pearce said, and your company when you have time to sit and talk. Mabel does not like us sitting with customers, Beatrice said, but she wanted to more than she could express. Then I will wait until your shift ends, Pearce said simply. If you would like to take a walk with me afterward, I would be honored. The idea of walking with Pearce after dark alone should have frightened her. Instead, it felt like an adventure, a glimpse of something different and better. "I would like that," she said. As she worked through the evening, Beatrice felt lighter than she had in years. Pearce's presence in the corner was like an anchor, steady and reassuring. He defended her twice more when men got too forward, never with violence but with a quiet authority that made even drunk cowboys back down. By the end of the night, word had spread through the saloon that the mountain man had staked a claim on Beatrice Voss, and most of the regulars gave her more respect than she had ever received before. When the saloon finally closed near midnight, Beatrice found Pearce waiting outside, leaning against the hitching post with his arms crossed over his broad chest. The moon was nearly full, casting silver light over Abilene's dusty streets. "Ready for that walk?" he asked. "Yes," Beatrice said, nervous and excited in equal measure. They walked in silence for a while, moving away from the noise and light of Main Street toward the quieter residential areas of town. Pearce matched his long stride to her shorter one, keeping a respectful distance between them even as they talked. "Tell me about the mountains," Beatrice said finally. "What is it like up there?" Pearce's face softened as he spoke, and she could hear the love in his voice. "Imagine standing on a peak so high that clouds pass below you," he said. "The air is thin and cold and so clean it almost hurts to breathe. Pine trees cover the slopes like a green blanket, and streams run clear and fast over rocks that have never known human touch. In the morning, the sun rises over the eastern peaks and turns the snow gold and pink. At night, the stars are so thick and bright you feel like you could reach up and gather them in your hands. There is a silence there that is almost a sound itself, broken only by the wind in the trees or the call of an eagle or the distant howl of a wolf." Beatrice listened, enchanted by his description. "It sounds beautiful," she said, "and lonely." "It has been," Pearce admitted. "I thought that was what I needed, that solitude. But lately, I have started to wonder if maybe I was just hiding, using the mountains as an excuse to avoid the risk of connecting with people again." "What changed?" Beatrice asked. Pearce stopped walking and turned to face her, the moonlight making his gray eyes seem to glow. "I met someone who reminded me what I was missing," he said quietly. "Someone who made me think that maybe some risks are worth taking." Beatrice's heart was pounding so hard she was sure he must be able to hear it. "Pearce," she whispered, his name feeling strange and wonderful on her tongue. "I know this is fast," Pearce said. "I know we barely know each other. But Beatrice, from the moment I saw you in that general store, something inside me recognized something in you. It is like I have been wandering lost and suddenly found a compass pointing home. I do not know how else to explain it." "I feel it too," Beatrice confessed, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. "It terrifies me, but I feel it. When you speak to me, when you look at me, I feel like I am seeing myself for the first time. Like maybe I am not what I have always believed I was." "You are not," Pearce said firmly. "You are so much more, Beatrice. And if you will let me, I want to spend time showing you that truth until you believe it in your bones." "How?" Beatrice asked. "You live in the mountains, I live here. What future could there be?" "I have been thinking about that," Pearce said. "I have some money saved from selling my furs. Enough to buy land, build a cabin, start a real life instead of just surviving. I was going to head back to Colorado Territory and do that alone. But now I am thinking maybe I do not want to be alone anymore. Maybe I want to build something that could be a home for two people instead of just one." Beatrice stared at him, hardly daring to believe what he seemed to be suggesting. "You barely know me," she protested. "I know enough," Pearce said. "I know you are strong and brave. I know you work hard and do not complain. I know you have been treated badly, but it has not made you bitter or cruel. I know that when I look at you, I see the kind of person I would be honored to build a life with. The rest we can learn together." "This is crazy," Beatrice said, but hope was blooming in her chest like a flower after rain. "People do not do this. They do not meet and decide to build a life together in just 2 days." "Maybe most people do not," Pearce agreed. "But I have spent years in the wilderness learning to trust my instincts, and every instinct I have is telling me you are worth the risk. I am not asking you to marry me tomorrow, Beatrice. I am asking if you would be willing to consider the possibility. To spend time with me and see if what I believe might be true actually is. And if it is, if you find that you could be happy building a life in the mountains with me, then I would count myself the luckiest man alive." Tears were streaming down Beatrice's face again, but this time they were not tears of pain or frustration. They were tears of hope, of possibility, of daring to believe that maybe her life could be different than she had always assumed. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I want to try. I want to see if this could be real." Pearce smiled, a real smile that transformed his bearded face into something almost boyish despite his rugged appearance. "Then we will take it slow," he promised. "I am not going anywhere for at least a week. We will spend time together, talk, get to know each other properly. And if at any point you change your mind, if you decide this is not what you want, I will respect that decision. No pressure, no expectations. Just two people seeing if they might build something together." "What about my father?" Beatrice asked, practical concerns intruding on her hope. "He will never let me go." "Does he have legal claim on you?" Pearce asked. "No," Beatrice said. "I am 20. I can make my own choices legally." "Then the question is whether you are willing to make the choice to leave," Pearce said. "I will not lie to you, Beatrice. It will be hard. He will try to stop you, make you feel guilty, maybe threaten you, but you have the right to your own life. No man, not even your father, has the right to keep you prisoner." Beatrice thought about her life in Abilene, the endless cycle of work and abuse, the future that stretched ahead with no hope of change. Then she thought about what Pearce was offering, a chance at something different, a life where someone valued her and spoke gently and made her believe she was worth loving. "I want to leave," she said, and saying the words aloud made them real. "I want a different life. I want to be someone other than what I have always been." "You will always be who you are," Pearce said gently. "The difference is that you will be free to discover who that person truly is, without the weight of other people's cruelty holding you down." They walked back toward the saloon slowly, talking about practical matters now. Pearce explained that he needed to make arrangements for the journey to Colorado Territory, buy supplies and prepare for the long trip. Beatrice would need to save what money she could and gather her few belongings. They agreed to meet each evening so she could finish her work at the saloon while getting to know him better. In a week, if she was still willing, they would leave Abilene together and head west to build a new life. The plan was both terrifying and exhilarating. That night, lying on her cot while her father snored, Beatrice let herself imagine a different future. She pictured the mountains Pearce had described, the cabin they might build together, a life where she woke without fear and went to sleep without bruises. Most of all, she imagined having someone who spoke to her gently, who saw her worth, who made her believe in herself. It seemed too good to be true, but for the first time in her life, she dared to hope it might be possible. The next few days fell into a pattern. Beatrice worked at the saloon while Pearce spent his days making preparations for their journey. Each evening, he came to the saloon and waited patiently until her shift ended. Then they walked through Abilene's quiet streets and talked. He told her about his life before the war, growing up on a farm in Missouri, losing his parents to cholera when he was 16. He spoke about the war years with reluctance, the things he had seen and done that still haunted him. He described his time in the mountains with more enthusiasm, teaching her about trapping and hunting and surviving in the wilderness. In turn, Beatrice found herself opening up in ways she never had before. She told him about her mother, who had died when Beatrice was 8, leaving her alone with a father who gradually drowned his grief in whiskey. She spoke about the dreams she had buried, of learning to read better, of seeing places beyond Abilene, of having a home that felt safe. Pearce listened to everything with that same gentle attention, never judging, always encouraging. On the third evening, as they walked along the creek where they had first talked that morning, Pearce took her hand. It was the first time he had touched her beyond those initial moments defending her in the saloon, and Beatrice felt the contact like electricity running through her body. His hand was large and calloused from hard work, but his grip was gentle, his thumb stroking softly over her knuckles. "Is this all right?" he asked, ever conscious of her comfort. "Yes," Beatrice breathed. "It is more than all right." They walked hand in hand as the sun set, painting the Kansas sky in brilliant shades of orange and red. Beatrice marveled at how natural it felt, how right, to have her small hand enclosed in his large one. She had never held hands with anyone before, had never experienced the simple intimacy of walking beside someone who wanted nothing more than her company. "I bought tickets on the stage to Denver," Pearce said as they walked. "It leaves in 4 days. From Denver, we will need to travel by horseback to reach the land I have in mind. It will be rough going, Beatrice. Long days of riding, camping at night, maybe encountering weather or wildlife." "Are you sure you are prepared for that?" "I am stronger than I look," Beatrice said. "And I am willing to learn. You will teach me what I need to know, won't you?" "Of course," Pearce promised. "I will teach you everything. How to ride, how to camp, how to survive in the wilderness. But more than that, I want to teach you how it feels to be cherished, to be valued, to be loved." The word love hung in the air between them, too big and precious to address directly. Instead, Beatrice squeezed his hand and said, "I want to learn all of that." On the 4th evening, disaster struck. Beatrice's father, who had been watching her increasingly frequent absences with growing suspicion, followed her when she left the saloon to meet Pearce. He was drunk, as usual, but angry in a way she had not seen in months. He caught up to them on a dark street away from the main thoroughfare and grabbed Beatrice's arm roughly. "Where do you think you are going with this man?" he demanded, his voice slurred but vicious. "You belong here taking care of me. I am your father and you owe me." "I owe you nothing," Beatrice said, finding courage she did not know she possessed. "I have worked to support us both for years. I have endured your fists and your curses. I am leaving and you cannot stop me." Her father raised his hand to strike her, but Pearce moved between them with surprising speed. He caught her father's wrist in one large hand, his face calm but his voice carrying unmistakable authority. "You will never touch her again," Pearce said quietly. "Beatrice is coming with me, and if you try to stop her, you will regret it." "She is my daughter," her father snarled. "You have no right." "She is a grown woman who can make her own choices," Pearce corrected, "and her choice is to leave. You should be ashamed of yourself, treating your own child the way you have. But your shame is not her burden to carry anymore." "Beatrice, please," her father said, and she heard desperation creep into his voice. "Do not leave me alone, I need you." For a moment, guilt warred with hope in Beatrice's chest. This was her father, the man who had raised her, who had once been different before the war broke something inside him. But then she remembered 20 years of harsh words and harder blows, of working herself to exhaustion while he drank away their future, of believing she was worthless because that was all he ever told her. "You need to face your demons without using me as a crutch," Beatrice said, surprised by the strength in her own voice. "I am sorry the war hurt you, father. I truly am. But I cannot save you, and I am done trying. I have to save myself instead." Her father's face crumpled, but Beatrice held firm. Pearce kept himself between them, a wall of protection she had never known before. Finally, her father stumbled away, muttering curses and threats that had lost their power over her. Pearce turned to Beatrice, concern clear in his gray eyes. "Are you all right?" "I am," Beatrice said, and realized it was true. "I am sad for him for what he has become, but I am not sorry for choosing myself. That is new for me." "You are growing into your strength," Pearce said proudly. "I can see it happening like a flower opening to the sun." "You are magnificent, Beatrice." She reached up and touched his bearded face, marveling at her own boldness. "Thank you for believing in me," she whispered, "for helping me believe in myself." Pearce covered her hand with his own, pressing it to his cheek. "You did the hard part," he said. "I just held up a mirror so you could see what was already there." The final 3 days passed quickly. Beatrice finished her work at the saloon, collected the small amount of money Mabel owed her, and said goodbye to the few people in Abilene who had shown her any kindness. Her father avoided her, drinking even more heavily than usual, and she felt both relief and sadness at his absence. Pearce was there every evening, steady and reassuring, helping her prepare for the journey ahead. On the morning they were to leave, Beatrice stood in the room behind the saloon where she had spent her entire life and looked around at the shabby furnishings, the stained walls, the narrow cot that had been her only refuge. She felt no regret at leaving it behind. She wore her best dress, which Pearce had insisted on buying for her despite her protests, and carried a small bag with her few possessions. Everything she had in the world fit into that bag, but she felt richer than she ever had before because she was carrying hope. Pearce was waiting outside with his horse and a second mount he had purchased for Beatrice, a gentle mare with kind eyes. He smiled when he saw her, and the warmth in his expression made her heart soar. "Ready?" he asked. "Ready," Beatrice confirmed. They rode to the stage depot where Pearce had their tickets and arranged for the horses to be transported. As they waited for the stage to arrive, Beatrice saw her father watching from across the street. He looked old and broken, and her heart ached for him despite everything. But she did not go to him. She had made her choice, and she would stand by it. The stage arrived in a cloud of dust, and Pearce helped Beatrice aboard with a hand under her elbow. As they settled into their seats, she watched Abilene disappear behind them, the town where she had spent 20 years believing she was worthless finally fading from view. She did not look back. The journey to Denver took 4 days of hard travel over dusty roads and through small settlements. Beatrice had never been more than a few miles from Abilene in her entire life, and everything was new and strange and wonderful. Pearce pointed out landmarks, told her stories about the places they passed, and made sure she was comfortable at each stop. At night, they stayed in roadhouses where Pearce always got them separate rooms, respecting her honor even though she found herself wishing he would not. She was falling in love with him, she realized on the 3rd night, lying alone in a strange bed and listening to the sounds of the prairie through the thin walls. She loved his gentleness, his strength, the way he spoke to her as if her thoughts and feelings mattered. She loved how safe she felt in his presence, how valued, how seen. But more than that, she loved who she was becoming when she was with him, the woman who could stand up to her father and choose her own future and believe she was worth something. Denver was bigger and noisier than anything Beatrice had imagined. A city of nearly 30,000 people nestled against the foothills of the Rocky Mountains. Pearce navigated the crowded streets with ease, securing them rooms at a respectable hotel and taking Beatrice to buy supplies for the mountain journey. She was overwhelmed by the choices, the abundance, the sheer number of people and buildings and possibilities. "It is too much," she confessed to Pearce as they walked back to the hotel that evening. "I feel lost here." "Then you will love the mountains even more," Pearce promised. "After this noise and confusion, the peace up there will feel like coming home." They spent 2 days in Denver while Pearce made final preparations. He bought additional supplies, arranged for pack animals, and talked to other trappers about conditions in the high country. Beatrice spent the time adjusting to her new reality, buying clothes more suitable for mountain life, and learning basic skills from Pearce about camping and survival. On their last evening in Denver, Pearce took her to dinner at a proper restaurant, something Beatrice had never experienced. She felt out of place in her new dress, uncertain which fork to use or how to behave, but Pearce guided her gently through the social complexities without ever making her feel foolish. "You learn quickly," he observed as they ate. "I have no doubt you will adapt to mountain life just as well." "I hope so," Beatrice said. "I do not want to disappoint you." "You could never disappoint me," Pearce said firmly. "Beatrice, I need you to understand something. I am not taking you to the mountains expecting you to be perfect or to know everything immediately. I am taking you there to give you the space and freedom to discover who you truly are without anyone judging you or hurting you. Whatever you become in that space, whoever you grow into, that will be exactly right." "How can you be so sure?" Beatrice asked. "Because I see your heart," Pearce said simply. "And your heart is good and true. The rest is just details." That night, Beatrice knocked softly on Pearce's hotel room door. When he opened it, surprise and concern flickered across his face. "Is everything all right?" he asked. "Everything is fine," Beatrice said. "I just wanted to talk if you do not mind." Pearce stepped aside to let her in, leaving the door propped open for propriety's sake. They sat in the 2 chairs by the window, looking out at the gas lights of Denver twinkling below. "I am scared," Beatrice admitted. "Not of the mountains or the journey. I am scared of believing in us and then discovering it was all a dream." "It is not a dream," Pearce said gently. "It is real, Beatrice, as real as you and me sitting here right now." "How do you know?" she asked. "How can you be so certain about us when we have only known each other a week?" Pearce was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "I cannot prove it to you," he said finally. "I can only tell you what I know in my heart and trust that time will show you I am right." "But Beatrice, I have lived 32 years on this earth. I have seen war and peace, civilization and wilderness, the best and worst of what people can be. In all that time, I have never met anyone who made me feel the way you do. When I look at you, I see home. Not a place, but a person. You make me want to be better, to build something lasting, to believe in a future I had stopped imagining. That is not something that happens often, and when it does, you do not let it go." "I feel that way too," Beatrice whispered. "You make me feel like I matter, like I am worth something." "No one has ever made me feel that way before." "You have always mattered," Pearce said. "You have always been worth everything. I am just the first person to say it out loud." Beatrice stood and crossed to where Pearce sat. She reached out tentatively and touched his hair, running her fingers through the dark strands she had wanted to touch since the first day she saw him. Pearce sat very still, letting her explore, his gray eyes watching her with an intensity that made her shiver. "Will you kiss me?" she asked softly. "I have never been kissed, not really. I want to know what it is like when it means something." Pearce stood slowly, his large frame towering over her small one, but there was nothing threatening in his presence. He cupped her face in his big hands with exquisite gentleness and looked into her eyes. "Are you sure?" he asked. "We can wait as long as you need." "I am sure," Beatrice said. "I want this. I want you." Pearce leaned down and kissed her, and Beatrice felt the world shift on its axis. His lips were soft despite his beard, gentle but firm, teaching her without demanding. She leaned into him, her hands coming up to grip his broad shoulders, feeling the muscles beneath his shirt. The kiss deepened, and Beatrice discovered that this was what it felt like to be cherished, to be wanted for more than what you could provide. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Pearce rested his forehead against hers. "I love you," he said quietly. "I know it is fast, but it is true. I love you, Beatrice Voss, and I will spend the rest of my life proving it to you." "I love you too," Beatrice said, and the words felt like freedom. "I did not know I could feel this way about anyone." "Then we will learn together," Pearce promised. "Everything that comes next, we will face it together." They left Denver early the next morning, riding out into the foothills as the sun rose behind them. Pearce led the way on his bay horse, with Beatrice following on her mare and two pack animals carrying their supplies trailing behind. As they climbed higher into the mountains, Beatrice felt civilization falling away behind them, replaced by something wild and beautiful and free. The journey took nearly 2 weeks, following trails that wound through pine forests and across meadows filled with wildflowers. Pearce taught Beatrice how to make camp, how to fish in the crystal-clear streams, how to read the weather and navigate by the sun and stars. At night, they slept in separate bedrolls near the fire, always proper, but the connection between them grew stronger with each passing day. Beatrice discovered she loved the mountains. She loved the clean air and the silence broken only by natural sounds. She loved the vastness of the landscape, the way it made her feel small but not insignificant. Most of all, she loved watching Pearce in his element, moving through the wilderness with confidence and grace, sharing the world he loved with her. One afternoon, nearly 2 weeks into their journey, they crested a ridge and Pearce reined in his horse. "There," he said, pointing down into a valley below. "That is where I want to build our home." Beatrice looked down at the valley and caught her breath. A stream ran through the center, surrounded by level ground perfect for building and planting. Pine trees ringed the valley like protective walls, and mountains rose on all sides, their peaks still capped with snow even in summer. It was the most beautiful place she had ever seen. "It is perfect," she breathed. "I claimed this land 3 years ago," Pearce explained. "I built a small hunting cabin on the far side, just 1 room, but it is solid and will do until we can build something bigger. I always thought I would live here alone, but now I see it differently. Now I see a real home, a place to raise a family, to build a life worth living." "A family?" Beatrice asked, hope and fear mingling in her voice. "If you want that," Pearce said quickly. "I do not want to assume, but yes, Beatrice, I want to marry you properly when we can find a preacher. I want to build a life with you here. And if you want children, I would be honored to raise them with you." "I want all of that," Beatrice said, tears streaming down her face again, but happy tears this time. "I want to marry you. I want to build a home with you. I want to have your children and raise them with love and kindness, the way I never experienced growing up." Pearce dismounted and helped her down from her horse, pulling her into his arms and holding her close. "Then that is what we will do," he promised. "We will build something beautiful together, Beatrice. A life full of love and respect and all the gentle words you never heard growing up. I will spend every day making sure you know how valued you are." They made camp in the valley that night, and Pearce showed Beatrice the small cabin he had built. It was rough but sturdy, a single room with a stone fireplace, a wooden bed frame, and a table with 2 chairs. But to Beatrice, it looked like a palace. "We can expand it," Pearce said, watching her examine their new home. "Add rooms, build a proper kitchen, maybe a loft for children someday, but for now it is shelter and it is ours." "It is perfect," Beatrice said. Everything is perfect." That night, they sat by the fire outside the cabin and talked about their future. They planned where to plant a garden, how to expand the cabin, what animals they might raise. Pearce described how they would survive the winter, the supplies they would need, the preparations they must make before the snow came. Beatrice listened and contributed her own ideas, feeling more alive and engaged than she ever had working in the saloon. As the fire burned down to embers and the stars came out in impossible profusion overhead, Pearce turned to Beatrice with a question in his eyes. "Will you marry me tomorrow?" he asked. "I know there is no preacher here, but we could speak our vows to each other before God and nature. Make it official in our hearts, and then formalize it with a preacher when we go to town for supplies in the fall." "Yes," Beatrice said without hesitation. "Yes, I will marry you tomorrow and every day after that." They spent that night in separate bedrolls still, preserving the proprieties even in the wilderness. But the next morning, as the sun rose over the mountains and painted the valley in shades of pink and gold, they stood together beside the stream and spoke their vows. Pearce went first, his deep voice carrying across the valley. "I, Pearce Brennan, take you, Beatrice Voss, to be my wife. I promise to love you, honor you, and cherish you for all the days of my life. I promise to speak gently, to see your worth, to help you believe in yourself until it becomes as natural as breathing. I promise to build a life with you that is safe and full of kindness. I promise to be the man you deserve, now and always." Beatrice spoke next, her voice trembling with emotion but strong. "I, Beatrice Voss, take you, Pearce Brennan, to be my husband. I promise to love you, honor you, and stand beside you through whatever comes. I promise to learn to believe the kind words you speak, to grow into the woman you see when you look at me. I promise to build a home with you full of love and laughter. I promise to trust you with my heart, now and always." Pearce took her hands in his and kissed her, sealing their vows with a tenderness that made Beatrice's heart overflow. When they broke apart, she saw tears in his gray eyes, mirroring her own. "Hello, wife," he said softly. "Hello, husband," Beatrice replied, and the word felt like magic. They spent that day preparing the cabin for their life together, cleaning and organizing, making plans for improvements. That night, for the first time, they shared the bed in the cabin, and Pearce showed Beatrice with gentle hands and patient love what it meant to be truly cherished. He was careful with her, mindful of her inexperience, teaching her with the same patient kindness he showed in everything else. "You are beautiful," he whispered against her skin, and Beatrice believed him. "You are perfect," he said as he held her, and Beatrice felt it might be true. "I love you," he promised as they came together, and Beatrice knew it was real. Afterward, lying in his arms with her head on his broad chest, Beatrice felt peace settle over her like a blanket. For the first time in her life, she felt safe, valued, and loved. For the first time, she believed the kind words a man spoke to her because Pearce had been proving them true every day since they met. The summer passed in a haze of hard work and deep contentment. Pearce taught Beatrice everything she needed to know about mountain life. She learned to fish and hunt, to preserve meat and gather berries, to recognize edible plants and dangerous wildlife. She learned to ride her horse with confidence, to chop wood and build fires, to predict weather and navigate the forest trails. But more than practical skills, she learned to trust herself, to believe in her own strength and capabilities. Pearce praised her constantly, not empty flattery but genuine recognition of her accomplishments. "Look at that garden you planted," he would say. "It is thriving because of your hard work." Or, "You are a natural hunter, Beatrice. You have the patience and the eye for it." Each compliment was another brick in the foundation of self-worth she was building, and slowly, Day by day, Beatrice began to believe she was the woman Pearce had always told her she was. They expanded the cabin, adding a second room and a proper kitchen. Pearce worked with strong hands and careful planning, while Beatrice helped where she could and learned carpentry skills she never imagined having. In the evenings, they sat by the fire and talked, sharing stories and dreams, learning each other's hearts in ways that went deeper than physical intimacy. "Tell me something you have always wanted to do," Pearce said one night as they watched the stars. "Learn to read better," Beatrice admitted. "I only had a few years of schooling before my mother died. I can read simple things, but books always seemed like magic I could not quite grasp." "Then I will teach you," Pearce promised. "I have books in my pack, brought them all the way from Missouri. We will read together every evening, and you will master it in no time." And so they added reading lessons to their evening routine. Pearce was a patient teacher, never making Beatrice feel foolish when she struggled with difficult words. By the end of summer, she was reading entire pages without help, and the sense of accomplishment filled her with pride. "I am proud of you," Pearce said when she finished her first complete book, a collection of poems. "Look at how far you have come, Beatrice. You should be proud of yourself too." "I am," Beatrice said, and realized it was true. For the first time in her life, she was proud of who she was becoming. In late September, they made the journey to the nearest town, a small settlement called Silver Creek, about 30 miles from their valley. They needed supplies for the winter and wanted to find a preacher to formalize their marriage vows. The town was tiny compared to Denver or Abilene, just a few buildings clustered around a general store and a small church. The preacher was an elderly man who asked no questions about their circumstances, simply agreed to perform the ceremony that afternoon. They stood in the small church with the preacher and his wife as witnesses and spoke their vows again, this time making their union legal and official. "You may kiss your bride," the preacher said, and Pearce did, thoroughly and enthusiastically, making Beatrice laugh against his lips. "Now you are truly stuck with me," she teased as they left the church. "Stuck is the wrong word," Pearce replied. "Blessed is better. I am blessed to have you as my wife, Beatrice Brennan." Hearing her new name, Beatrice felt another piece of her old identity fall away. She was not Beatrice Voss anymore, the worthless saloon girl from Abilene. She was Beatrice Brennan, wife of a mountain man, woman of strength and capability, someone who was learning to believe in herself. They loaded their supplies and headed back to the valley, arriving just as the first snow of the season began to fall. Pearce had prepared them well, and their cabin was snug and warm as winter settled over the mountains. For 6 months, they were snowbound, cut off from the outside world, and Beatrice discovered she did not mind at all. In fact, those winter months were some of the happiest of her life. They spent long days working together to maintain their home, tending to their few animals, keeping the fire going, preparing meals from their stored supplies. In the evenings, they read together, talked, made love, and planned for the future. Beatrice learned to sew and knit from books Pearce had brought, making clothes and blankets for the home they were building. Pearce taught her to play checkers and cards, and they had tournaments that lasted for days. "I never knew marriage could be like this," Beatrice said one snowy evening as they sat by the fire. "I always thought it was about duty and obligation. I did not know it could be about partnership and joy." "It should always be about those things," Pearce said, pulling her close against his side. "When two people truly love each other, when they respect each other and see each other's worth, marriage becomes the greatest adventure of all." "I am so glad I met you," Beatrice whispered. "You saved my life, Pearce." "You saved your own life," Pearce corrected gently. "I just helped you see that you could. You are the one who had the courage to leave, to risk everything on the possibility of something better. That strength was always inside you, Beatrice. I just held up the mirror. In the spring, when the snow melted and the valley burst into bloom, Beatrice discovered she was pregnant. The realization filled her with joy and terror in equal measure. She told Pearce over breakfast one morning, watching his face carefully for his reaction. "We are going to have a baby," she said simply. Pearce's face went through a series of expressions: surprise, joy, awe, landing finally on a tenderness so profound it brought tears to Beatrice's eyes. "A baby," he repeated softly. "Our child." "Beatrice, that is the most wonderful news I could imagine." "You are not frightened?" Beatrice asked. "I am terrified." "Of course I am frightened," Pearce admitted. "But I am more excited than scared. We are going to be parents, Beatrice. We are going to raise a child with love and kindness, showing them every day that they are valued and cherished. We are going to break the cycle of hurt that both of us experienced and create something new and beautiful instead." "What if I am not a good mother?" Beatrice worried. "I never had a good example. What if I do not know how?" "You will be a wonderful mother," Pearce said firmly. "You have the biggest heart of anyone I know. You are kind and patient and strong. Our child will be lucky to have you." His certainty helped ease Beatrice's fears. As the summer progressed and her belly grew, Pearce was endlessly supportive and gentle. He took on extra work to spare her, brought her flowers from the meadow, read to her in the evenings, and told her daily how beautiful she was. He talked to her growing belly, telling their child stories about the mountains and promising love and protection. "I cannot wait to meet you," he would say, his large hand spread across Beatrice's stomach. "I cannot wait to show you this beautiful world and teach you about all the wonders in it. But most of all, I cannot wait to love you the way you deserve to be loved." Their son was born on a crisp October morning, arriving with the turning of the leaves and the first hint of winter in the air. Pearce delivered the baby himself, his steady hands and calm voice guiding Beatrice through the pain and fear. When he finally placed the squalling infant in her arms, Beatrice felt her heart expand to hold more love than she had known was possible. "Hello, little one," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Hello, sweet boy, we have been waiting for you." "He is perfect," Pearce said, his own eyes wet with tears. "You did so well, Beatrice. You are amazing." They named him Thomas, after Pearce's father, and he became the center of their world. Beatrice discovered that motherhood came more naturally than she had feared. Her instincts were good, and Pearce was an involved father, taking his share of sleepless nights and diaper changes without complaint. "I love watching you with him," Beatrice said one evening as Pearce rocked Thomas to sleep. "You are so gentle, so patient. He is going to grow up knowing what a good man looks like." "He is going to grow up knowing what love looks like," Pearce replied, "because he has you as his mother. You are giving him what you never had, Beatrice, a childhood full of security and affection. That is no small thing." As Thomas grew from infant to toddler, the valley felt more and more like home. They added another room to the cabin for the nursery, expanded the garden, acquired more animals. Pearce continued trapping in the winter months, providing furs to sell when they made their trips to town, ensuring they had money for supplies and the occasional luxury. Beatrice became an integral part of the mountain community, such as it was. The few other families who lived in the region came to know and respect her. She was no longer the frightened girl from Abilene who had never heard a kind word. She was Beatrice Brennan, capable mountain woman, loving mother, valued wife. She had grown into the person Pearce had always seen when he looked at her, and she believed in herself now with a certainty that felt like bedrock. When Thomas was 2, Beatrice discovered she was pregnant again. This time, there was less fear and more excitement. She knew what to expect, and she had Pearce beside her, steady and supportive as always. Their daughter was born in the spring, a tiny red-faced bundle who came into the world screaming her displeasure. They named her Sarah, after Beatrice's mother, and she proved to have her mother's determination and her father's steady temperament. Life settled into a rhythm that felt sustainable and good. Pearce worked hard to provide for his family, but he never let work come before relationships. He spent hours playing with Thomas, teaching him about the mountains and wildlife. He helped with Sarah's care, rocking her to sleep and changing her diapers without complaint. Most importantly, he continued to speak gently to Beatrice, to praise her efforts, to tell her daily how much he loved and valued her. "You are an amazing mother," he would say. "Look at how happy and secure our children are. That is because of you." "It is because of both of us," Beatrice would correct. "We are doing this together." "Yes," Pearce would agree. "Together, just like I promised, everything together." Years passed in the valley, marked by the changing seasons and the growth of their children. Thomas grew tall and strong like his father, with Pearce's gray eyes and Beatrice's determination. Sarah was smaller and fiercer, with her mother's dark hair and her father's gentle heart. They added a third child, another son they named Daniel, and then a fourth, a daughter they called Margaret. The cabin expanded with their family, growing from the original one room to a proper house with multiple bedrooms, a large kitchen, and a main room where they gathered as a family in the evenings. Pearce proved as skilled at carpentry as he was at trapping, and the house he built was solid and beautiful, perfectly suited to their mountain life. Beatrice sometimes thought about her life in Abilene, the frightened girl who had never believed she could be anything more than what she was told. She thought about her father, who had died a few years after she left, drunk and alone according to the letter that finally found her through circuitous routes. She felt sad for him, for the man he might have been if the war had not broken him, but she did not regret leaving. She had saved herself, and in doing so had created a life beyond anything she had imagined possible. "You ever regret it?" she asked Pearce one evening as they sat on the porch of their home, watching their children play in the meadow below. Coming to Abilene that day, taking a chance on a broken girl from a saloon. "Never," Pearce said firmly. "You were never broken, Beatrice. You were bent, maybe, by cruel circumstances and harsh treatment, but you were never broken. Your strength was always there, just waiting for the chance to grow. All I did was give you that chance." "You did more than that," Beatrice said. "You spoke gently when I had only heard harshness. You praised me when I had only heard criticism. You saw worth in me when I saw nothing. You loved me before I knew how to love myself. That is not a small thing, Pearce. That changed everything." "Then I am glad I walked into that general store in Abilene," Pearce said, pulling her close. "I am glad I saw you and recognized something essential and true. I am glad you had the courage to trust me, to take the risk, to build this life with me. Every day with you has been a gift, Beatrice. Every single day." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the mountains, painting the peaks in shades of purple and gold. Their children's laughter floated up from the meadow, a sound more precious than any music. Inside the house, dinner was waiting, and after they ate, they would gather as a family to read and talk and simply be together. It was not the life Beatrice had imagined for herself growing up in Abilene. It was better. It was built on foundation of respect and love, on gentle words spoken consistently until they became truth, on two people who had chosen each other and continued choosing each other every single day. As darkness fell and the first stars appeared, Beatrice leaned her head on Pearce's broad shoulder and thought about the journey that had brought her here. From Abilene to the mountains, from brokenness to wholeness, from believing she was worthless to knowing she was valued beyond measure. It had all started with a mountain man who spoke gently and saw worth where others saw none, who praised her until she believed him, who loved her into becoming the woman she was always meant to be. "I love you," she said softly. "I love you too," Pearce replied, "now and always." And in that moment, with her husband beside her and her children safe and happy, Beatrice knew with absolute certainty that she had found her home. Not just a place, but a life, a family, a future built on the gentle words and steadfast love of a man who had seen her worth from the very beginning. The children eventually came running up from the meadow, hungry and full of stories about their adventures. They burst into the house in a tumble of energy and noise, and Beatrice rose to serve dinner, Pearce helping as he always did. They ate together around the large table Pearce had built, everyone talking and laughing, sharing the events of their day. After dinner, they gathered in the main room as was their nightly custom. Pearce read aloud from a book while the younger children snuggled close. Thomas and Sarah, older now and more independent, still stayed close, drawn by their father's voice and the warmth of family. When the reading was finished, they talked about plans for tomorrow, about the work to be done and the adventures to be had. "Tell us about when you met Mama," Sarah asked, a question she had asked many times before but never tired of hearing. Pearce smiled and pulled Beatrice close. "I walked into a general store in a hot, dusty town," he began, "and I saw the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. She was buying supplies and she was 2 cents short. I gave her the money and she looked at me like she could not understand why anyone would be kind to her. But I saw something in her eyes, something strong and precious and true. I knew right then that I wanted to know her, to talk to her, to maybe build a life with her if she would let me." "And then what happened?" Daniel asked, though he knew the story by heart. "Then your mother took the biggest risk of her life," Pearce continued. "She trusted me enough to leave everything she knew behind and come with me to the mountains. She was brave and strong and amazing, and every day since then, she has proven me right. She is the best thing that ever happened to me, and you children are the second best thing. Together, we have built something precious here, a family full of love and respect and kindness." "Tell about the wedding by the stream," Margaret piped up. Beatrice took over the story, describing their vows in the valley, the sunrise painting the mountains gold, the feeling of starting a new life with someone who saw her worth. The children listened raptly, even though they had heard it all before. The story of their parents' love was the foundation of their world, proof that love could heal old wounds and create new possibilities. When the children were finally asleep, Beatrice and Pearce sat by the fire, enjoying the quiet after the bustle of family life. "We have built something good here," Beatrice said. "Something worth all the risk and fear it took to get here." "We have," Pearce agreed, "and it keeps getting better. Every day with you, every moment with our children is better than anything I imagined in my solitary years in the mountains." "Do you ever miss it?" Beatrice asked. "The solitude, the simple life before all this?" "Not even for a moment," Pearce said firmly. "That life was about hiding, about avoiding connection because I was afraid of being hurt again. This life is about growth and love and building something that matters. I would not trade it for anything." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, then Beatrice spoke again. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" Pearce asked. "For everything," Beatrice said. "For seeing me when I was invisible. For speaking gently when I had only heard harshness. For praising me until I believed you. For loving me into becoming the woman I am today. For giving me this life, this family, this home, for all of it." "You did the hard work," Pearce reminded her. "You are the one who had the courage to change, to grow, to believe in yourself. I just provided some encouragement along the way." It was more than encouragement, Beatrice said. It was transformation. Before I met you, I thought I knew who I was, worthless and damaged and destined for a hard life. You showed me a different truth. You helped me see that I could be strong and capable and loved. That is not a small gift, Pearce. That is everything. Then I am glad I could give it to you, Pearce said, pulling her into his arms. Just as you gave me the gift of connection, of family, of a reason to build something permanent instead of just surviving day to day. We gave each other what we needed most, Beatrice. That is what love does. Years continued to pass in the valley, marked by the milestones of their children's lives and the deepening of their own relationship. Thomas grew into a young man much like his father, strong and gentle, with a love for the mountains and a natural skill at wilderness living. Sarah proved fierce and independent, determined to do everything her brother could do and then some. Daniel was the quiet one, thoughtful and creative, always building or making something. Margaret was the baby, spirited and loving, wrapping everyone around her little finger with her charm. Pearce and Beatrice aged together, their hair graying and lines appearing on their faces, but their love remained as strong as it had been that first day in the general store. They still held hands when they walked, still kissed each other goodnight, still spoke gently and praised each other's efforts. The habits they had established in those early days became the foundation of a lifetime together. When Thomas announced he was courting a girl from one of the neighboring valleys, Beatrice felt time's passage acutely. Her son was becoming a man, preparing to start his own family. She was proud and sad in equal measure, proud of the man he had become, sad to see childhood ending. "It happens faster than you think it will," Pearce said as they watched Thomas ride off to visit his sweetheart. "One day they are babies, and the next they are grown and making their own choices." "Did we do well?" Beatrice asked. "Did we give them what they needed?" "Look at them," Pearce said, gesturing toward their children. "They are confident and kind. They know they are loved. They treat each other and others with respect. They have skills and dreams and the courage to pursue them. Yes, Beatrice, we did well. We broke the cycle of hurt and created something better. That is the greatest legacy we could leave." Thomas married his sweetheart the following spring in a ceremony by the same stream where Pearce and Beatrice had spoken their own vows nearly 20 years before. It was a joyful celebration, bringing together the scattered families of the mountain region for a day of food and music and happiness. Beatrice watched her son pledge his love and thought about her own wedding day, how far she had come from that frightened girl who could barely believe in the possibility of happiness. "Our family is growing," Pearce said that night as they lay in bed. "Soon there will be grandchildren." "I can hardly believe it," Beatrice said. "Sometimes I still feel like that girl in Abilene, and then I look around and realize decades have passed. I have lived more life, more real life in these years with you than in all the years before combined." "You have lived fully," Pearce agreed. "You have loved and been loved. You have raised children and built a home. You have become the woman you were always meant to be. That is not a small thing, Beatrice. That is everything." The grandchildren did come, first Thomas and his wife welcoming a son, then another, then a daughter. Sarah married a few years later, choosing a young rancher from Silver Creek, and she began her own family. Daniel showed no interest in marriage, content to work with his hands and live simply, and that was acceptable too. Margaret, the youngest, surprised them all by developing a passion for teaching and announcing she wanted to go to Denver to attend normal school and become a teacher. "It will be different here without her," Beatrice said when Margaret left for Denver. "The house will feel empty." "It will feel different," Pearce agreed. "But it is good that she is following her dreams. We raised them to be independent, to think for themselves, to pursue what makes them happy." Margaret teaching is no different than Thomas trapping or Sarah ranching. They are all living the lives they choose, and that is what we wanted for them. As Beatrice and Pearce entered their later years, they slowed down but never stopped. They still tended their garden, still maintained their home, still spent evenings reading and talking. Their children and grandchildren visited often, filling the house with noise and laughter before departing again to their own lives. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sun set over familiar peaks, Beatrice took Pearce's hand. "Do you remember what you said to me that first day in the general store?" she asked. "I said several things," Pearce replied with a smile. "Which one do you mean?" "You said I looked like I could use a break," Beatrice said. Such a simple thing, but it was the first time anyone had acknowledged that I was struggling, that I deserved kindness. That was the beginning of everything. "I remember," Pearce said softly. "I remember seeing you and knowing somehow that you were important. I did not know yet that you would become my wife, the mother of my children, my best friend and partner in everything. But I knew you mattered, and I knew I wanted to help if I could." "You did help," Beatrice said. "You helped me become myself. The real me, not the broken version that life had created, but the strong woman who was underneath all along. Every gentle word, every bit of praise, every moment of respect and love built me up until I could stand on my own. And then you stood beside me, and we built this life together. It is more than I ever dreamed possible. We built it together," Pearce emphasized. "Your courage, your strength, your capacity for love, those were the foundation. I was just fortunate enough to be the person who got to witness your becoming and share your life." They sat in silence as darkness fell, comfortable in each other's presence as only people who have spent decades together can be. The stars emerged one by one, the same stars that had watched over them on their wedding night and every night since. "I would do it all again," Beatrice said suddenly. "Every hard moment, every fear, every risk. If it meant ending up here with you, I would do it all again without hesitation." "So would I," Pearce said. "Every moment has been worth it, Beatrice. Every single one." As they aged into their 60s and then 70s, Pearce and Beatrice gradually transitioned from active mountain life to a quieter existence. Thomas took over most of the heavy work, managing the trap line and the animals with help from his sons. Sarah visited often, bringing her children and grandchildren, filling the house with multiple generations. Daniel built himself a small cabin nearby and continued his quiet life, always available when his parents needed help. Margaret returned periodically from Denver, where she had become a respected teacher, bringing stories of the growing city and the changing world. Through it all, Pearce and Beatrice remained devoted to each other. Even when age made simple tasks difficult, even when health challenges arose, they faced everything together. Pearce still spoke gently, still praised Beatrice's strength and courage, still made her feel valued and loved. Beatrice still marveled at her good fortune, still thanked whatever providence had led a mountain man into a general store in Abilene so many years ago. On a crisp autumn morning, when Beatrice was 73 and Pearce 75, they walked slowly down to the stream where they had spoken their wedding vows more than 50 years before. It was their custom to visit this spot on their anniversary, and neither age nor infirmity would keep them from the tradition. 53 years, Beatrice said, sitting carefully on the rock where Pearce had stood that long ago morning. More than half a century together. "The best years of my life," Pearce said, settling beside her with a slight grunt. "Every single one of them." "Mine too," Beatrice agreed. "You know, I still remember what it felt like to hear kind words from a man for the first time. I remember how shocking it was, how I did not know how to accept it, And I remember how patient you were, how you kept speaking gently and praising me until I finally believed it was true." "It was always true," Pearce said. "From the very beginning, everything I said to you was true. I am just glad you eventually believed me." "I believe you now," Beatrice said. "I believe that I am strong and capable and worthy of love. I believe that I did good work raising our children and building this life. I believe that I am the woman you always said I was." "It took time, but your words sank in deep, Pearce. They became my truth." "That is all I ever wanted," Pearce said, taking her wrinkled hand in his own. "For you to see yourself the way I see you, the way God sees you. Beautiful, strong, precious, and loved beyond measure." They sat by the stream as the morning warmed, talking about their life together, remembering the high points and the challenges, the joys and the sorrows. They talked about their children and grandchildren, the legacy they were leaving, the love they had built that would continue in future generations. "We did good work," Beatrice said finally. "You and I together, we built something that will last beyond us. Our children know love, know respect, know how to speak gently and build families based on kindness rather than cruelty. That is no small thing." "It is everything," Pearce agreed. "It is the best possible outcome of our love." As the sun climbed higher and the day grew warm, they made their way slowly back to the house, where family was gathering for their anniversary celebration. Children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren filled the house and yard, multiple generations brought together by the love story that had started in a dusty general store in Kansas so many years ago. Thomas stood to make a toast, raising his cup high. "To my parents," he said, his voice carrying across the gathered crowd, "who showed us all what love should look like, who built a life based on respect and kindness and gentle words, who taught us that we could be better than what we came from, that we could break cycles of hurt and create something beautiful instead. Everything good in my life, everything I have passed on to my own children, came from their example." To Pearce and Beatrice Brennan. "To Pearce and Beatrice," the crowd echoed, and Beatrice felt tears stream down her weathered face. Pearce pulled her close, his arm still strong around her shoulders despite his age. "Look at what we built," he whispered in her ear. "Look at all the lives we touched, all the love we created. This is what happens when you speak gently, when you help someone believe in themselves, when you love without condition. It multiplies, Beatrice. It grows and spreads and changes the world, one family at a time." "I love you," Beatrice said, the words as true now as they had been the first time she spoke them. "I love you too," Pearce replied. "Forever and always, my Beatrice, forever and always." The celebration continued around them, but for a moment, it was just the two of them, the mountain man and the saloon girl who had found each other against all odds and built a love that lasted lifetimes. They had proven that gentle words could heal deep wounds, that praise could build confidence where there had been only shame, that love could transform and redeem and create something beautiful from broken pieces. As the sun set on their anniversary day, painting the mountains in shades of purple and gold one more time, Beatrice leaned her head on Pearce's shoulder and thought about the journey that had brought her here. From Abilene to the mountains, from despair to hope, from brokenness to wholeness. It had all started with a man who saw her worth and spoke gently until she believed him, who praised her until the praise became truth, who loved her into becoming the best version of herself. "Thank you," she whispered one more time. "Thank you," Pearce replied, "for taking the risk, for trusting me, for building this beautiful life with me. Thank you for everything, Beatrice." And in that moment, surrounded by family, held in the arms of the man who had changed everything, Beatrice Brennan knew complete and perfect happiness. She had lived a full life, loved and been loved, raised a family built on kindness and respect, and left a legacy that would continue for generations. She had become the woman she was always meant to be, and it had all started with a mountain man who spoke gently until she believed his praise. The story of Pearce and Beatrice Brennan became legend in the mountain communities, passed down through generations as an example of what love should look like. Their children told their children, who told their children, about the mountain man who saw worth in a broken saloon girl and the woman who had the courage to believe him. They spoke of gentle words spoken consistently, of praise given freely, of respect offered without condition. They told how two people from difficult backgrounds had chosen to break the cycle and create something better, and how that choice had changed not just their own lives, but the lives of everyone who came after them. Years later, when both Pearce and Beatrice had passed peacefully in their sleep within months of each other, their family gathered in the valley to remember and celebrate. They stood by the stream where two people had spoken wedding vows more than 60 years before, and they remembered the lessons those two people had taught them. Love is patient and kind. Love speaks gently and builds up rather than tearing down. Love sees worth even when the person themselves cannot. Love praises and encourages and believes in possibilities. Love transforms and heals and creates something beautiful from broken pieces. These were the lessons Pearce and Beatrice had lived and taught, and their descendants carried those lessons forward into the world. The cabin they had built still stood in the valley, expanded and improved by subsequent generations, but still essentially the same. Inside, on the wall above the fireplace, hung a simple wooden sign that Pearce had carved in their early years together. It read, "She believed she could because he told her so." It was a reminder, a testament, a promise that the gentle words of one person could change the course of another's life entirely. And so the legacy continued, spreading outward like ripples on a pond, touching lives in ways that Pearce and Beatrice could never have imagined when they first met in that general store in Abilene. They had taken a chance on each other, built a life on foundation of respect and kindness, raised a family to carry on their values, and in doing so, had changed the world in the best possible way in the end. It was a simple story. A mountain man spoke gently to a woman who had never heard kind words. He praised her until she believed him. He loved her into becoming the best version of herself. And together, they built a life that proved love could heal, transform, and create something beautiful that would last for generations. It was a simple story, but it was everything. It was the best possible proof that gentle words, consistently spoken, could change everything.